You knew if you needed help, Jerry was there. You knew if you needed to learn something, you weren't sure how to do it, Jerry was there. You knew if you made a mistake, Jerry was there to still have your back and teach you not to do it again and why. Jerry was every bit of an icon. He's every bit of an icon to the industry. In my eyes, he deserves this Hall of Fame award in every which way because of his leadership. That I will say, even for myself, that I feel fortunate I was able to follow behind a leader like him and learn right behind him, right? And he's really taught me a lot. Jerry's a man that never seems to fear developing others. And that's something that I think is really challenged by a lot of leaders, right? Because
well, I think in any industry you have those few people you look at and say, wow, that's the pinnacle of our industry. That would be Jerry Vinci.
And I guess there's one thing you can't fake, and that's passion. And Jerry has every bit of that. And at the end of the day, for us, he's here because he wants to be here, and we know that, and that is invaluable.
You and I both have brick running through our bloodstreams, correct? You know, we've lived a life and everything, but when you look at someone who also has the same characteristics, but he has spent his life not just selling brick, but pushing, advocating, and trying to take it to new heights. That is Jerry Vinci.
With Jerry, tell us about Jerry Vinci.
Well, if there's a definition that exists of a class act, I'd put Jerry in that definition with a few other people I know, but it's a limited amount of it's a limited group, in my opinion. He just has a lot of character, integrity. He's been good for the business, good for the brick business, came up in the brick business.
Welcome to Illinois Brick's new showroom at Little Miss, our grand opening. Thank you all for coming.
Welcome back for another episode of the Brickman's Hall of Fame. I'm Don Foster, the host, and I'm going to tell you, if you didn't know anything about Jerry Vinci, you're going to know a lot about Jerry Vinci when we're done. He's been inducted for 2019, even though it's 2022. COVID and travel and just set us way back. So one of the things I'll tell you the most about Jerry Vinci is a man of tremendous patience, because it's taken 3 years, Jerry, sorry about that, to get you to do this. But we are together, we're getting a chance to do it. And I'm gonna mention a name to some of you will know, Jim O'Connor. Jim O'Connor is with the Masonry Contractors Association of Chicago, MCA, and he's a great guy. We love this guy dearly. He's an awesome guy, big fan of Jerry. And you know, we call Jim O'Connor the legend of Chicago. And my son Logan brought that up to me the other day, and he says, I thought Jerry Vinci's the legend in Chicago or of Chicago. Is there some confusion there? And I said, no, let me specify. Jim is the legend of Chicago. Jerry is the legend in Chicago. So that ended up a family debate. And the family debate was, Logan came back to me and says, you know what, I think we should adjust that a little bit. And he says, I want you to know that I think we see Jerry, and Logan's been doing a lot of research with me, my son, getting ready for Jerry and the back history. And I've known this man for a lot of years. I mean, a lot of years. So a little history. And I said, Logan says, you know what, I go through all this stuff with your dad. I think we need to change that. And he wants to change it to the man in the arena. And I was like, I don't know. But the more I thought about it, the man in the arena, when we go through Jerry's story today with you, beginning to the end, you're going to find out he is the man in the arena. He has done it. He's been there from the beginning of time, all the way to the beginning of the time. So Jerry, welcome. We really love having you here and doing this with you. Thank you again for your patience. You're director of Brickworks now.
Yes.
Been in the business for over 40 some years. And actually our 40 years is going to go longer and deeper than that. But the 40 years that we've got, let's go back in. It's more than just the title director. Go into a little bit more about Brickworks.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for having me, first of all, Don. Thank you. Brickworks is a fantastic company, right? So I've known them for many years. They've been one of our top partners, one of our vendors. We've been one of their top customers. So I got to know the inner workings a little bit of Brickworks, and I was very happy to see them purchase the Southfield company, right? My title, integration, director of integration, is more than just integration, right? It's special projects, kind of a sounding board for throughout the whole company, right? Anybody can call me up, and I'm willing to answer any questions, take some time, walk through some procedures. It's been fun so far, very much so.
Well, and Brickworks and I'll table it a little bit, but Brickworks, just what they've done in their expansion from Australia to here, even the other buying brick manufacturers, which is a big deal, buying the size of a dealership that you guys are, the distributor network you guys had. It's an amazing story in itself, but I want to focus back on you. I want to get back to you a little bit. So I'm going to take you back to 1979, 43 years ago, graduated with a business degree from Lewis University, and you end up with your first and only job interview that introduced you into our industry was for Louisville Cement Company, and then you sold cement for 1.5 years. So initially you had a choice to go back into the family business.
Right.
But before we did that, and I tell everybody about the family business, we get into that, what was it like going into selling cement?
Well, I mean, that was my first job right out of college. Interviewed with a gentleman named Frank McGann. And I always knew I wanted to be in the masonry business somehow, whether it was working with my father's business or doing something. I really didn't know, right? So what intrigued me about sales was meeting a lot of different people, right? Not doing the same thing every day. So when the opportunity came up to sell cement, I took the opportunity, right? So I figured, let's try this, and if it didn't work out, obviously I'd fall back to the family business.
So let's talk about the family business. So the family business goes back, and you end up having the same similar history as your dad. So it goes back to your grandfather.
Right.
And your grandfather, I believe, was Nick, right? I think it's Nick, and he had Nick, Vinci, and Sons.
Correct.
So we had your dad, Sam.
Yes.
And then Sam's brother was part of the business with them, right?
My Uncle Frank. Yes.
Uncle Frank.
Right.
So you get a chance to grow up while they're going together.
Right.
But what we find out is your dad grew up the same thing with Grandpa's business, whether it's going from carpentry and later into masonry and those kind of things all the way through. So Sam, part of the brick industry all the way, blood in his veins, goes to the Army, comes back for World War II, and joins and becomes part of the masonry crew, right?
Exactly. My grandfather had a general contractor business, did carpentry, concrete, and masonry, right? My dad fell in love with masonry just like I did, right? So he took the masonry business and started that in 1947 or 48, I believe. And he retired when he was 65, so basically 40 years later. And did many different jobs in Chicago, well-known jobs, won many awards in Chicago here. He was more in the commercial side, schools, churches, did a few residentials, but it was just fill-in mostly, but he loved the commercial aspect of it.
So for you, growing up now, your dad grew up with his dad's business. You're growing up with your dad, full-time masonry and everything else. So it's not like you started I'm taking you back to high school now.
Right.
So we might say 47 years now, but let's add a bunch more, because as a young man, a kid growing up, you're seeing your dad's business and understand what he does. What's neat about that is it gets a point where you start doing summers, summer help out of school and stuff like that, high school, whatever. Right. You became famous for striking joints. Tell us a little about that.
Well, yeah, I started out as a laborer, like most people do in the industry. You can't just jump right into laying bricks. So did laboring through most of high school, and then when I got into college, my dad said, "Why don't you try laying some brick in the wall?" And I did, mostly, in the lines, not so much doing the leads, but on the lines. But one of the tasks he gave me that I loved doing, actually, was striking the walls, right? So my dad said, we don't make money striking the walls, we make money laying bricks. So I'm going to take my crew, go lay brick over here, you strike the walls, finish them up, brush them up. And it was almost like artistry, right? Because I almost had to have them perfect, right? All the lines perfect and everything. So then I finished that wall. Bricklayers would be done with that wall. They would jump to somewhere else. I go strike that wall, right? So I became a professional striker. That's what they called me, pretty much. Yeah.
And it's an important role, because it's a finished product of the wall. So let's say if you don't strike it, you strike it too deep and not so deep different times, depending on the joint. And if you get into where it's too wet, too soft, you get a whole different look.
Exactly.
I mean, it might even be the mortar color, but might look a little different because you're pulling those lines, right?
Exactly. So, you had to fill in the joints, make sure, like you said, make sure the joints were all perfect, and makes the wall. If you looked at a wall that wasn't struck properly, you would know somebody didn't know what they were doing. You
would see it, right?
You would see it, for sure.
So one of the not so much fun jobs you got to do, and especially when it comes to, we didn't have all the noise protection or whatever it was.
Yep.
Cutting brick. Tell us about cutting
Well,
brick.
cutting brick, that was one of my other responsibilities, I guess, during the summer there. Again, my dad did a lot of commercial jobs, schools, churches, and there was a lot of inside partitions, right? So you had to cut the block for all the electrical outings and around doors and everything. So my job basically for a couple summers probably was on the saws, right? Making them cuts. And you're right, no PPE back then, and that's why I got a little bit of ringing in my ear today. Reminds me of them days quite a bit. But again, it was a great experience.
Yeah, it was. To see what you do, we talked some earlier, you and I, about, you go from the mortar industry, what you do, and I don't like to, never want to put down the drywall guys, but I always remember, the drywall, and I've laid some drywall, I've helped different projects. And you get it done, you get the tape, and you putty everything and sand it all down, make it look nice. Oh, they throw paint on it and cover it with pictures and photos. We really don't get to enjoy it and bring your significant other to come and say, hey, let's look at my drywall I laid.
Right.
But when it comes to brick and cutting and shapes and details, that's where the majesty comes from,
Exactly,
right?
exactly, right. Yeah, and again, going back to the cutting aspect, it was, when there's a good cut, right? If there was not a lot of gaps on the side and stuff like that. So I got pretty good at that. And then on the brickwork side, yeah, I mean, very ornamental, making cuts on the saw for that, for the corners or the jams or whatever was always, you got to be precise to make the job look good.
The nightmare today for everybody is cutting the white coated, light colored brick with a red body.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting the red dust.
Exactly.
You got to control
Probably
that.
back then there wasn't as many coated brick. They're all pretty much through the body brick.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, but that is a wake-up call, right? For
Right.
everybody, that's their first job.
Yeah.
So one of your number one customers, or one of your biggest customers back in the day when you were selling mortar was, or cement, was Prairie Brick Company, right?
It was. When I had the Chicago territory, selling cement to all the different distributors here, and Prairie Brick, or Prairie, was one of my customers, and they just opened up a brick division back in 1980. And I started calling on them, right? And I seen how they were growing their business a little bit in it, how they grew the masonry or the ready mix business, and I knew it was a company that was going to grow in the future, and I wanted to be a little bit a part of it. So they actually got to know them pretty well, and the Remus family asked me to join them in the brick business.
So the cement company was the Louisville Cement Company.
Right.
They wanted a rep in Chicago.
Correct.
1.5 years you did that, and
Yep.
then you had an opportunity to move on to selling brick in South Side Chicago.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. I had all the distributors on the south side, a few in the city, but mostly my responsibility was the south side.
And you also had, that was mostly just residential, right? You focused on, with the brick lines you had back then.
Well, yeah, on the cement side, it was selling to everybody, right? Didn't matter what they were doing. But on the brick side, when I started as a brick salesman, the responsibility was the south side. And we say the south side Irish because back then, just most builders and the masons were Irish, right? So started calling on them. And once you get in with the Irish clique, you do a good job for them, the word spreads, and it's how I built my base, is just taking care of one after another after another.
And that was with the Irish builders,
Yep.
the Irish masons.
Masons, correct, yep.
I could relate to that. Our corporate office is based in South Bend,
Right.
and it's all Irish everywhere. So
Right.
we have north, south, east, and
Right,
west
right.
Irish, right?
And I can't forget the Italians, right? Because there's quite a few Italians, including my father's business. He became one of my customers.
Absolutely. Is that kind of neat, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you had choices when you came out of college to go in Dad's business, but
Exactly.
Dad was really stepping you up to
He did.
look at other options.
He did.
Right?
He said, let's take the option of going to college. I want you to go to college and see how what path that takes you. And if you don't like it or you want to come back to the business, come on back. So I thought maybe it was me a short thing, just go out and selling. But I enjoyed it a lot, going to meet new people. And again, everything was different every day. I give it to the mason contractors. That is hard work. I give my hat off to them for sure.
One of the stories you share, I think, is great to have you share for the audience.
Yeah.
Is back in the day, your first choice wasn't to go back with Dad. You saw all the work he did and labor he did, and remember about estimators.
Yeah,
Your dad did it all back
exactly.
then, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things that kind of drew me to college and say, yeah, maybe I don't want to go in the masonry business, because I saw my father every weekend figuring plans, setting up payroll, talking to general contractors, trying to land jobs. Same thing during the week. At night, he'd come home, we'd dinner, and then he'd go back to figure out plans and go right back to the business. So not knowing anything different, I thought that's how a masonry company was run. The owner did everything, right? And I wasn't afraid of work. I just thought there was I shouldn't say an easier path. I just saw how hard my dad worked and was very successful what he did. I just wanted to try something different before I took that path.
Hard to raise a family and do the things and socialize when you have to do that so hard.
Yep.
No, I get that a lot. So, and but then you realize that, hey, as a company and you grow, there's other people get hired. There could be estimators, there could be other stuff. So beauty of it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
No, that's really cool. So you end up being one of three, one brickyard. You come into Prairie, one of three sales reps, right?
Exactly. We had 2 reps before they hired me in 1981, March of 1981, and they took a chance because back then it was interest rates of 21%. So we say right now it's at 5, 6, 7%, and they say, oh, that's a lot, but back then it was 21%, and people would say, why are you getting in the brick business? There's but it was the opportunity, right? The Aremises saw an opportunity to get in the brick business because there wasn't much going on. No one was selling anything, so we had an opportunity to acquire lines, right? Lines were the lifeblood of all distributorships. If business was really good, probably wouldn't have got the lines or the start we really did.
Got it. Okay. And I think that's cool. And I'd like to share that you think about one location. There's 3 of you. You got mostly the south side and you're working and trying to build it, some brick. And back in 1981 now, let's jump ahead a couple of years. You end up growing to 5 salespeople. That's when Prairie bought the Illinois brick name, right?
We did. We ended up buying Illinois brick. We heard it was for sale from Old Ford Industries out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. They wanted to sell the name, not the business, although they were still making block in a town called Broadview, not too far from here. But they had a great reputation of Illinois brick. It's been in business since the early 1900s, 1901 to be exact.
Wow.
They were actually Illinois brick was actually one of the largest common brick producers in the world, basically. And about 27 plants here, right? So they had a great reputation in Chicago, and they had 2 great salespeople. And they also had some lines that we were looking to grow our business. So acquire the lines, acquire the salespeople, you grow your business.
And introduce you to the architectural world.
Exactly. We're mostly concentrated on the residential at that time. And when we acquired Illinois Brick with the lines and the 2 salespeople they had, which were mostly architectural, we got in the architectural game, yes.
That's fantastic. So still 1 yard.
Yep.
1986, you become the sales manager of the team.
Correct. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that, the change for you and what your vision was at that point.
Well, I mean, again, just taking care of our customers. That's how we were growing from 1981 to 86. We took care of our customers and just continued growing, looked for opportunities to hire people, right? And take on more lines and more territory. The Remus family was very open to that, and we took advantage of it, really did.
And you're still selling throughout all this.
I'm still selling. I still sell today a little bit. I still have some customers that I started in 1981, believe it or not, that they remind me of the day I walked on the job with my tie on and, and kind of green in the business, and we're still friends today. And,
oh, that's awesome,
for sure.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. So 1993, you bought Ram Brick.
Yep.
And that was adding 1 more location.
Yes.
But also introduced you to the Belden line. You got to meet the Beldens,
we did.
Right?
Yes, we did. Ram Brick was probably the premier architectural line or distributor in Chicago at the time. And we wanted to grow our business, and we wanted to grow it in the architectural field, right? So our owner, Jack Remus, had a relationship or knew Kent Ram at the time and approached him and said we wanted to buy his business, and he was more than open to doing that. So we ended up buying their business.
And where does Kip fall? Is he the son?
Yeah,
of
Kip
Kent?
is the son of Kent, and besides Kip, I believe there was 3 or 4 other salesmen. Again, just concentrate mostly on architectural.
Got it.
But again, they had all architectural lines. I mean, besides the Belden, I think they had Carolina Ceramics. They might have had a few others. Obviously, it wasn't just. But Belden was the carrot.
That could have been Endicott, that could have been Interstate.
Yeah,
kinds of
they didn't have either one of them lines.
Not back in that day,
no.
okay.
No.
And then in 1993, you also bought Holman Brick,
Right.
which now you're increasing to 3 yards. Now you're starting to see that expansion in your early years from just one and adding more sales reps, more territory. Now you have physical locations.
Exactly. Holman Brick was a business in the western suburbs, and we saw the growth going out to the western suburbs. And they had lines we didn't have, and lines are the lifeblood of the business, right? So between the yard, the salespeople, and the lines, there was another opportunity to grow our business, and we did.
And you're back during that period through the 90s. I don't think people realize that how many different brick manufacturers were out there. I mean, some of them are the bigger names that you have today. They really bought up a lot of those, but there was a lot of brick companies at one time.
There was. I mean, I was probably, when I started in the business, I guess there was probably 70, 80 brick manufacturers. And in Chicago, there was probably about 30 distributors. Wow. And we're down to about 9 or 10 today.
Isn't that amazing, the change that happened?
Right.
So I'm going to take us to 96, and then I'm going to leapfrog a little faster, but you added Brady Brick, Woodstock Brick, and Beck Brick. Right. That took you up to 6 locations. So that was in 1996. So what I wanted to do was, you also started to expand. You started looking at Indiana, you started looking at Wisconsin.
Yes, we did.
At that time, because it's right on the border, right? Northern part of Chicago.
Right, yep. First one was Indiana, and we had a ready-mix yard in Bloomington, Indiana. And they had the relationships, again, with the builders. Didn't have too many relationships with the masons, but the builders, they certainly did. So we opened up a brick division in Bloomington, Indiana. And that kind of leapfrogged us into our next acquisition, right, which was Edgewood Brick, which was not too far. And they were in Indianapolis. And Randy Craig, which owned Edgewood Brick, which I knew very well, and this industry is great, right? You go to all these meetings and everything, you meet people, and they become friends for life, right? So Randy and I had a very good relationship. So that little acquisition, or not that little acquisition, but that little step we took in Indiana, in Bloomington, Indiana. Next meeting I saw Randy and said, "Hey, you guys serious about Indiana?" I said, "We sure are. We're going to grow our business." He says, "Well, how about talking to me?" Right? So that's how we kind of got into the Indiana business. And at the time, Edgewood, 2 locations in Indiana, one on the north side, or Indianapolis, one on the north side, one on the south side, was actually the premier residential company in Indianapolis. So we acquired them, and that kind of opened the floodgates for us to go in to buy more companies in Indiana.
Yeah, and the rest of that's history. So just a leapfrog from 1980 to 2017, you've got to witness, or were a part of, 37 years of growth to go all the way from 1 to 22 locations.
Yes.
And that is, if I cannot say, go back to what Logan brought up earlier, the man in the arena, kind of makes sense now, right? You're the man in the arena. You are experiencing, and especially a lot of it from a management position, that growth. And you talk about assisting every time you took on another company, even like my influence with the early years with Rose Brick, when you came to look at us. You still have to look at us, but you think, how are we going to merge the mindsets? I mean, you're in a perfect job with Brickworks, right? As you expand and do all the things.
Exactly.
You've done this again and again and again and again. It's amazing. And this time, the difference this time, it's the brick manufacturer through the distributor network that they're really trying to grow, right?
Exactly.
That's just huge. No, that's a great job. So you've had so many titles over the years, well-deserved, really has well-deserved. But I really want to talk about, and I don't think a lot of people know, getting to the heart of it, is that all the different committees you're a part of. And I know there's been brought up, we mentioned some of the stuff in the past where, you know, the influence you've had on the BIA, Brick Industry Association.
Yes.
You've been a part of that for almost 20 years, as far as back as I can remember, but all different kind of committees, not just one, whether it's for assisting in the BIA itself, or maybe it's the Distributor Council influence. Because remember, you go back, and you might want to touch base on that a little bit. You were part of the merge when they talked about the brick distributors were separate association than the BIA. I don't know how many years that goes back.
They probably merged. Well, they used to have distributor councils for the distributors and the manufacturers, and they used to have separate meetings, right? Talk about the same things, and then they decided to merge them together because they're just to save time, right? But the big premise of that was the distributors didn't want to talk about the manufacturers didn't want to talk about the distributors in the same room, right? And that was kind of why it took so long for them to merge together. But it's been a good thing. Sharing information and being open and candid has been the best for our industry.
And it's never enough, because we've lost so much market share. We'll get into that a little bit today, later in this interview. But it's been tough. And even now, saying to the brick industry, you got to really get involved with the masons. They're your bloodline. They're the ones that lay the brick that you make. I mean, it's so key. It's all connected. It really is all connected. One of them is the BDI, which
Yes.
is the Brick Distributors of Illinois, and you were really involved with that for quite a few years. You were vice president and later president of that. Tell me a little bit about that group.
Well, that group there was, again, there was not everybody in Northern Illinois was a part of that, but most of the big distributors were. And we set the tone and the marketing for how to grow our market share in Chicago. One of the best things we did was go around and get our brick and ordinances, the town ordinances, right? So it was built-in business, right? So no matter what a builder said, they had to use masonry, or at least on the first floor. And we started that like 30 years ago, right? And it kind of grew and grew and grew. So I think there's over 100, 150 towns in Chicago, suburbs that have that ordinance now. Now I think the BI is kind of catching on, right? I think we're doing some of that around the country. I know Brickworks is now involved in some of that, and they see the value of having brick ordinances where you're mandating masonry, right? So it's been a good thing. It was a good thing. It grew our market share, and as it grew Illinois Brick's market share, it grew all our competitors' market share too. So
It sure did.
It sure did. Yeah.
And that's good in it. I know Stan McCarthy was a big one when I first got to know him in Acme Brick. He'd be bringing it up all the time,
Yeah.
you know, and then it started to hit me, man, boy, we need to go back to the foundation, the roots, you know.
Yeah.
You think about, you mentioned earlier about the fire in Chicago all those years,
Right.
how it changed masonry as you know it, right?
Right, exactly. In the city, they had an ordinance. You had to have masonry, whether it was brick or block. That ordinance, unfortunately, had changed about 4 or 5 years ago. It doesn't have to be all masonry anymore, but the ordinance is still, even though it's not in place, has still affected the building design, right? There's a lot of buildings that are still designed with masonry and will be for many years to come.
And I was surprised about the width, the thickness of your first base of
Right.
the brick.
Yeah.
That was, when I saw how big it was, that really blew my mind, actually. I didn't realize
Yeah,
that.
I mean, there could be up to 8 widths of brick on the bottom and then kind of funnel up. And most of the walls were at least three widths thick.
And I knew the history going back in the day beginning, you know, we talk about why the reason for water table shapes, right? It was a great transition
Right.
as we're going up the wall. Not realizing that it could be 8, that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of thickness. I mean, that controlled your water and moisture too, right?
Exactly.
It's hard to get all that through the wall.
Exactly.
Didn't have to worry about flashing.
Design is key, right? So
Didn't have to
you
worry
don't
about
know that.
flashing or weep holes at that point. Sioux City Brick Company, now they're part of Brickworks now.
Yes.
But in the older years, Sioux City was, you know, there are many years when I was with Glengarry, we competed against Sioux City. You were part of that council.
I was on their distributor council, yep. So I was fortunate enough to be with the Mahonies. They invited me to be on the council and with 4 or 5 other distributors from around the country and got together once a year. We talked about distributor problems and not only that, but what would benefit us, right? I mean, they always listen to what would benefit us, whether it's a brick size, a brick color, distribution. I mean, it was good to be part of it and hear other distributors' visions and ideas too, and take them back to our company.
Anthony Nidino is a good friend of yours and mine,
Yes.
and go back a lot of years. And he actually brought, we did a small interview talking about you with Anthony. He brought me a picture of us. It's got to be 20 plus years. It's got to go back to maybe it's long. It's got to be longer than that, I guess. 25 years of you and I golfing together. You can't recognize us when you look at it. I mean,
you
really
showed me
can't.
that earlier. It was very
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, I had dark black hair.
And so if the gang has it, they're going to put the picture up for us so
okay.
everybody can see it. But
All right.
that's kind of a fun thing, so we go back. But I met you back at the Glengarry. It was the Midwest Distributor Council, okay? And you played a major part of it. But what I really want to go back to the audience is firsthand, which most people don't know, is that I have oversight of the plan of Iberia. And eventually Caledonia, I shared that. And then I had Hanley. When it comes to deciding what to, I say to you, I come to you and say, hey, what do I need to do to get into Chicago? And you'll say, I need these colors, I need these sizes,
Right.
I need these price points. If you can meet that, we can move some product for you. I mean, it was that clean, and we would go start making the products.
Right.
Whether one example is like Aspen Whites or W103s out of Hanley. It's a white brick, you know, architectural brick. I need a good clean brick, I need good quality, I need you to repeat.
Right.
Those things, then I go back to the plant and said, hey, we got to get to work. This is what we need. We want to move 10 million brick or 15 million brick to Chicago market.
Right.
You know, I mean, how much brick would you say is in Chicago on average over the years? What would you say the size of this market is?
It's changed through the years. I mean, our best year that I know of is 2006, and we probably sold, as a market, 200 million SBEs in the market. Today, it's maybe half of that.
That's a sad
Of
truth,
course,
isn't it?
you know, housing starts back then were 26,000 single family. And during the pandemic, we went down to about 2,500. And now with the last 4 or 5 years, we've been, you know, staying around, you know, 6,000, 6,500. So big changes. Yeah, so going back to the developing products, right? I've been fortunate not only at Iberia to help you guys develop products, the Marseilles plant, which is right in our backyard. I can't tell you the amount of times I've been at the plant and helped them develop products that were in the market
and
here.
Ray Staub depended on you,
Ray
didn't he?
Staub was a good friend of mine, and yes, he did. He got my input on quite a bit of things down at the, you know, at the Michigan plant, Meridian now. I'm fortunate enough to help them develop some products there, name some brick. I got to do quite a few things that I'm proud and happy to do.
It's becomes part of your legacy, and you know what I love about you is that even though in all the years you put in, and you're 40-some, there's no quit in you. You're still passionate. You still love the business.
Oh God, yeah, I still love the business. Yeah, I feel like, especially in this new role, right? Everything is new to me, or a little bit new to me. It's new but old, right? I guess. And there's a lot of opportunities. So yeah, I'm energized every day. I want to help the company grow. I want to help the salespeople and the managers that are here that have not had the experience I had grow, right? Become better managers, become better salespeople.
So not picking on the drywall
Yeah.
people. I'm gonna get all the hate mail from them and emails, but you know, they work hard, beautiful trade. But tell us what's special about brick. It's in your blood, right? It's just
It's in my blood. But I mean, it's just a beautiful product, right? I mean, it's just it's stately. It makes you feel safe going on a brick building. I guess from the point of view of value, it certainly makes the property more valuable in my eyes, in all the buildings and
Yes.
around it, right? So if you had an all brick neighborhood or an all glass neighborhood, I think people would choose brick.
Right, over the choices.
100 times, 100%.
But all the benefits, right? All the benefits of brick that
yes,
it give you, it's just
right.
amazing. That list
Yep.
goes on and on.
It does.
So we do that. So let's talk a little bit about Brickworks. You know, Brickworks came in. I mean, you talk about the position you are. So you guys are at, you know, you went up as high as 22. Of course, this is locations. This is when you're still, you know, I guess we want to say there's a transition. We should talk a little bit about, you know, going from Prairie all the way through, you know, the different, you know, thinking that they went through to get where they at, because you guys were growing like mad. You get up to 22 locations.
Right.
Before Brickworks gets involved, you also have, you got to close some, right? You got to close some down. Maybe I can, you know, I got to manage. You always got to manage and try to be successful. So you get, before Brickworks buys you, overall somewhere in there, they're probably around 15, right? There's about 15 in that transition, right?
In Illinois and Indiana, there's 15 locations.
15 locations. So now Brickworks comes in. Now Brickworks is already starting to dabble into the distributor network. They bring in close to 10 maybe?
They had 10 originally, yes.
Okay.
Right. And then we ended up closing Kansas City and Reading, Pennsylvania.
Okay, so Redding's Yard was there for a long
Right,
time.
exactly. Right.
So let's talk a little bit about the transition from Prairie, Southfield. Was that a big transition or letterhead change? And then what it was like going from that to Brickworks, because that's a lot of years just from Prairie to Southfield.
Right.
I always thought it was a whole nother company that came in and bought you, but what you shared with me earlier, that's not true. So take us through that.
No, it isn't. Prairie obviously was the largest ready-mix company here in Chicago, owned by the Remus family. And then in 2008, they decided to sell the business on the ready-mix side. So the name went with the company that bought them, right? So they had to come up with a new name because the brick division's the only thing they really kept was the brick division. So they had to come up with a new name. So the founding, John Remus, which founded Prairie, he lived in a little town not too far from here called Southfield. So they said, what a great name to name our new company, Southfield, kind of.
Oh, wow.
As a thank you or to him, right? John, or as a memorandum to him. So that's how the name Southfield came to be, and really was no transition. It was I still reported to the Remus family, Alan Remus, which I've been reporting to him basically for 40 years.
Wow.
Great guy, and let us run our business, and it was been a good ride on that. So yeah, there's no difference between Prairie to Southfield, right? So we were Southfield for a number of years, and under Southfield, the umbrella that was the parent company, we had Illinois Brick, we had Rose Brick, we had Edgewood Brick, we had Lafayette Masonry, so we had all our little companies under the Southfield umbrella, but we were still, everybody was known as, you know, the companies in your geographic area. So Illinois Brick was in Illinois here, or northern Illinois, and then in central Illinois. We have 3 locations in central Illinois too.
So like with Rose Brick, you own Chesterton, right?
Yes.
Chesterton
Yep.
location.
Yep.
You just had that name transfer over to that. Okay.
Right, in South Bend too.
Yep, you kept with that with Rose
exactly,
Brick too. Okay.
Exactly. Yep. So, and then when we got acquired by Brickworks, it was a pretty easy transition, right? So again, as I mentioned before, that we were their largest customer and they were our largest vendor, right? So I had an opportunity to meet their managers, Lindsay Partridge, Mark Eleanor, Robert Milner, the chairman of the board. I met them many times as being their customer, right? So I was very comfortable with their knowing that what they're all about really is to grow the masonry business, right? And they figure if they can grow the masonry business and sell more brick, everybody's going to sell more brick, right? So
Absolutely.
I just see that as the next evolution of growing the business, right? Is somebody taking marketing to a new level to promote our brick products, right? So I was very comfortable coming to work for them, and that's when I had the opportunity to stay with them. I stayed with them, and I relished the opportunity to grow my career in brick in general for the whole industry.
And it's neat because it's not like, you know, Brickworks is not willing to sell Belden and other things.
Right.
You guys realize the importance is
Yep.
to be unified more now than ever.
Yep.
Market share has gone down. You've seen it. It was so much higher many years ago, before 2008, for example.
Right.
But once it's dived, we never been able to get it back to where it was.
Yep.
And market share right now, we could be in the low upper 20s or low 30s. I mean, overall for wall share throughout the country, whether it's residential or commercial,
Right.
different pockets. The South might have a little bit more or whatever. You know, my area in South Bend, Indiana, boy, you're lucky if you get a little wainscot in the front of a building, right, for brick. What do we need to do as an industry to take it back? We have the best product in the world, right? Why do we have the best product, competitively priced,
Right.
especially with wood and steel and everything else, prices going up now? Why can't we get it back?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, it is the message. We need to have a unified message, which I think we're getting to that point right now as an industry. I think we have to have masons, like you said, on our side, right? Not fighting with our masons or thinking that they can't help us, but they really can, right?
Yes.
And I think we're getting more involved with the Mason Contractors Association as I know we are in Chicago, and I know Brickworks is on the national side, getting together with the Mason contractors, and I'm sure every manufacturer, major manufacturer, even small manufacturers or their local masons, they see how important them, because they are our lifeblood, right? So, and I mentioned education, educating the builders and the homeowners of the why brick is the product to choose, right? Longevity, insurance purposes, resale, yeah, a lot of different reasons.
Well, the trades, we're always worried about not having enough masons, and we have different pockets throughout the country now that they realize they got to get into the high schools. Some of the other trades,
Right.
you know, electrical and carpentry, they're starting getting into the high schools. And masonry, what they're doing in North Carolina is just the most amazing thing I've ever seen. But they're also looking at Arizona, Texas, and a few other places. I would love to see these programs grow everywhere to the trade. But what you have is juniors and seniors come out of high school, they really don't want to go to college, but they didn't realize how much money they can get on a wall and lay a brick and become a future supervisor or whatever. There's a lot of money to be made for them.
There is.
Especially today compared to what it was when you guys were laying brick back in the day.
Right. Yeah.
It's
No.
really-
It's a notable profession. As I said before, the masons that I know or don't even know, they are. I look up to them, right? Because I know how hard they work for their money. and what goes into being a good craftsman, right? Good mason contractor, right? So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for somebody coming out of high school to get in the masonry trades, and I encourage anybody to try it, right? So we have a great apprentice school here in Chicago, and they do a phenomenal job. Once they get them under their wings, teaching them and getting them out in the market, yeah, we need to grow. We need to grow our masons for sure.
It's going to be my second trip to North Carolina. I get to go down there and just work with a lot of the instructors at the high schools. They have close to 100 of them now set up in schools where they've donated tools and masonry and brick, and these kids get to learn, young men and young ladies. And then now I get to go back down in 2 weeks. They're doing like speed dating where I get 7 minutes with a group of kids, 15 kids come in front of me, and I can talk about brick matching or whatever, get them just related to something, trying to pique more excitement or interest in it. But there's going to be a whole bunch of the trades. They'll just go from group to group to group. They're going to shuffle through 600 kids. And what's neat about that, I said, what more can we do? And one of these people are just so bright. They come back to me, I'm thinking, well, I'm so glad you get into juniors and seniors. Well, we're going to go after sophomores and freshmen next. Never thinking about they can start seeing that as an option. Probably not, you know. You go to your guidance counselor back in our day, what do you want to be? Well, I want to be a forest ranger. You know what I mean? You just, you don't know what you want to do. But now these kids have a different direction. The other thing I was wondering I should share with you is, and we've talked about this a lot, is we got to get back into the architectural schools. Some are better than others, but masonry is not a main thing that people they're being taught.
No, my understanding is they're getting like 1 hour a semester of masonry, right? And that's not enough to know that it's a product that is, it should be the product of choice. Let me just put it that way. I mean, it should be the product of choice, and they don't know enough about it to design with it, right? And design properly, right? There's so many different products out there they can choose from. Every building, even on the residential side, every building has, or every house has 2 or 3 products on it. Before, when I started, everything was brick, right? And the siding, the soffits, and the wood were up in the top. Now it's, stone entryway, stone wainscot, then brick, then siding, so that's how it's really changed. There's so many different products people have to choose from, so we have to educate the architects, to educate the builders, educate the masons, and the homeowners. Everybody, it's a collective thing to grow our business. You have to educate.
It is, and I'd like to think of if we can get them back on board all the way through and understand that even they get somewhat creative, whether we're going to do brick and block, knowing that we got different movement and there's other things to do that with. Sometimes all brick or all block, maybe we should stay with one, not the others. But the BIA does the brick and architecture. They do the awards, all that. And I think that's the coolest thing that I've ever seen us do. If we could just do more of that and promote more of that and challenge the architects, we need to get your projects up there. You need to build something. To think about the old Masons, you're talking about going back into time with you, okay? Some of the churches that were built 100 years ago, 75 years ago, are some of the most amazing architecture I've ever seen in my life.
Absolutely.
And it's easier for us to make the shapes and do all the details for them, and we have the knowledge more today. How is it that we have all the knowledge today when they had it all those years ago? I mean, you think about, those are standing the test of time. They're not falling over.
No, you're right. I mean, there's some of the most beautiful buildings that are up, right? So I think it boils down to cost and the architect's designing, right? And they don't know, again, going back to just they're not educated enough on the masonry side to design the right buildings. Or if you get lucky enough to work for a firm that always built with masonry, you're in it, right? If you go out at architectural school and you go to work for somebody that doesn't build in masonry, you're never going to build in masonry, right? So we got to educate them, architects that have never built with too much masonry, to get them to try it, and then,
No, I agree with you 100%. So what do you want, if you said, tomorrow I'm going to retire and call it and do it, what would you want people to remember about Jerry Vinci?
Oh, gosh. That I love the industry. I always wanted to do good for the industry. I wanted to help my fellow employees. I always thought about who I work for and where I came from, right? The hard work my dad instilled in me, I think I've carried that through my whole life. And I would encourage all salesmen and managers that are in the business now to do the same, right? I should say be yourself, but also you need to be what it's hard to say, but I would say if you're honest, return phone calls, be an advocate for your customer, and look out for your company. There's no limits where you can take your career.
Well, you definitely have done that. When Anthony got me started on Sam. He's targeted your dad for me, so that's how that first. But I didn't go into deep till Jim O'Connor. He came to about your history and what your dad did and what you did. That you're really a brick guy from it's your bloodlines as a kid, a child, and that triggered with me right away, saying we got to go deeper nosedive. When you talk about the man in arena that Logan talked about, that makes so much more sense to me now than I ever had. You're that guy.
I've been doing my whole career has been masonry, right? Whether it's starting out laboring, like I said, all the way up to where I am today. Everything in between has been masonry. Love the industry, love the people in the industry. Some of my best friends are in this industry, and I got to travel throughout the whole country and meet people and do things I probably couldn't have done if I was a mason contractor, but this job has been everything to me.
So I have a little token for you.
Sure.
You're getting it in 2022, but it's in 2019. You're with a great class with it, and of people that were inducted over that period. And this is something too that you could use as a little memento. Some have used it as a doorstop, which if I catch you, you're in trouble. But no, it's one of the little things for you. So I wanted to give that to you.
Thank you.
And
appreciate that. Thank you.
You are my man. You are awesome, and I sure appreciate you being part of this. Jerry's inducted now officially into the Brickman's Hall of Fame, and the Hall of Fame is more than just the inductees. It's catching a moment of time with him, which we did today, but it's also about the history. We can talk about the history, which he has that history, especially with a company as long as the years that you have all the way through. We also have a section about experts. Who's more better than you as an expert all the way through? So, all the things, the different things that we can do with it that we have, you fit the model for everything. I cannot find a better person to be, and it's an honor for me to have you a part of that.
I appreciate that.
And, we need more Jerrys in this industry, and we are thankful that he is one of those and he's with us. So thank you for honoring me to do this and take your time. You have a wonderful family. Gina, thank you for allowing us to have here. He could have been doing some shopping and looking at some kitchen designs today.
I've been very fortunate to have a very supportive wife. Let me do what I do.
You
got to put a lot of hours in this business to be successful, and she's been very supportive.
She's been a treat. So last closing, tell us a little bit just about Gina, your two wonderful kids, and let's just tell us about the two grandkids you have.
Yeah, sure. Well, kind of coincidence. I got married the same year I started with Illinois Brick or Prairie. I got married in 1981, which I started this job in 1981. So we've been married 41 years.
Wow.
Two great kids. Michael, that has expecting his first child, lives in California, in the real estate business, and a daughter, Alexander, has got two great kids. Alexander, which is 17, and Brody, which is 7. So adore them both. Both little great little baseball players. Can't wait to follow them in their futures. They've got both great, bright kids.
So in the meantime, you're still going to sell a lot of brick before
Absolutely.
that 100% happens.
Absolutely.
So.
Yep. Looking forward to it.
Jerry Vinci.
Jerry probably doesn't have to be here. Jerry wants to be here. And he said that. He said, now working for Brickworks and seeing what a great organization, that they care about the people the way they do, you couldn't have someone better than Jerry to see that. I'm sure if it wasn't that way, Jerry would be retired right now. But Jerry has made it very clear to each and every one of us, it's in his goal, a part of his legacy, that he's going to help us get to that place where he knows there's some comfort within the integration of the business, and he wants to know that we're on the right track for the brick industry. And for that, we'll be grateful.
Well, I think for closing for Jerry Vinci, I appreciate what you're doing with the Brickman's Hall of Fame. You're trying to recognize the pillars of the brick industry, the guys that push push the industry forward. Relentless time they spend with the BIA, pushing everything. So for us, Jerry Vinci's always been a guy I've looked up to in the industry. Well-deserved. He's everything the Brickman's Hall of Fame stands for. So I agree. So nice job having him part of the Hall of Fame.
You know, Jerry, we've had quite an adventure. The adventure continues. I couldn't be more thankful that it's you and I. You've challenged me over the years. We have had our laughs, we have had our struggles, we've had our matches, haven't we? But at the end of the day, we've always come together with a common interest to make an impact on the business. I really mean it when I say it, but I love you like a father in this industry, and I'm really thankful for everything you've done with me, and I do mean every bit of that. For Jerry and I, it just builds a bond that I really sometimes struggle to find how you explain that to someone, because it's special. It's like that relationship with a real family member. When someone says, do you love your son? You can say yes, but it's a lot deeper than that. And I think there's a lot of that between Jerry and I, that we've experienced life together. Think how much time you spend in the office, or how much time you go on, call them vacations, call them trips, call them jump on a plane together. Jerry and I have been traveling this nation for well over 20 years.
So let's talk about Chicago a little bit. So I have some friends coming to town. We want to go to Chicago. Where's the greatest pizza place to take him to Chicago if I'm going to do pizza?
I would say Uno's.
Uno's, yes, I do know Uno's.
I do love Uno's. I love the deep dish there, so I would highly recommend that.
Is that where Sam, your dad, would say Uno's? Is that, he mentioned a pizza place that he thought was really good. Where was that at?
Oh my gosh. To be honest with you, I don't know where he would go. I mean, he's more of a, right now, I mean, he's been out of the city for 50 years, right? So it's more of a suburb thing probably for him now.
Is it so where was he thinking about to go this week? If he's going to go to a place this week.
Well, tomorrow night, we're going to go to Fox's Pizza.
Fox's Pizza,
which is a nice deep dish, deep dish crust. Yeah, very, very good. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So how about, let's talk about, let's do a little baseball.
Okay.
Cubs, Sox.
I'm a Cubs guy, believe it or not. Grew up in the South Side. Again, I'm gonna keep on going back to my dad, but my dad's office and where he grew up was only 3 or 4 blocks from Sox Park. He was a big Sox fan. My son's a Sox fan. I just happen to be a Cubs fan, and that all came about. It all came about when, growing up, going through grade school, come home from after school, turn the TV on. What was the Cubs, right? Because they didn't even have lights back then. Everything was day games. So I was kind of following the Cubs, and just fell in love with them, right? So I'm not against the Sox. I could probably go to more Sox games than Cubs games, but if I had to pick the two when they're playing each other, I'm picking the Cubs.
Favorite Cubs baseball player?
I would probably say Ron Santo.
Was there Ryan Sandberg?
Ryan Sandberg, yeah, Ryan Sandberg.
Second base or something he did?
He played second base. I think he played some shortstop. Yeah, I mean, a lot of great players in Cubs history. Again, just going back to my childhood when I watched it a lot. 1969,
That's going to go back more
yeah.
years than I would have been involved in that.
Exactly.
Sammy Sosa was one I collected for a while there, right?
Yeah.
He was Cubs, right?
He was Cubs at the end, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Doing that home run stretch.
Exactly.
All the way through him and Mark McGwire.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, so favorite Chicago Bears, of course, right?
Chicago Bears. It's got to be Walter Payton.
Well, yeah, it has to be, right?
Walter Payton, right? Yeah, he brought so much energy to the team, right? And I think that's what pushed the rest of the team to the Super Bowl. His energy. One
of my closest friends and Jay Harwood's closest friends is Rick Gale. Mm-hmm. He loves life, but Walter Payton's been his friend. So I think it's his cousin runs into Walter Payton out there, and she says to Walter, "Can I get you on the phone and talk and call my cousin?" Yeah. So Rick Gale gets the phone, he picks it up, and it's Walter Payton. The guy says Walter Payton. He thinks it's one of us playing a joke on him. And then he's in tears later. Walter Payton is beautiful idol. But I got to meet Walter Payton's kids.
Okay.
Logan, I don't know if you know, was they did the Man of the Year Logan that they did years ago. So I get a phone call. I'm down with the guys. You probably know these guys. Metro Brick. Do you know Dennis Callender?
Yeah,
from Texas. From Texas. Great guy. We're down and traveling. He has a Super Bowl party. I'm sitting there at a Super Bowl party with him. He's got it on TV, and they call us, Mike Fury, who's up to run for man of the year, right? For it, is going to have his picture. He's one of the three. They're down to the last three. They're going to pick which one. So who goes up on the thing is Mike Fury and my son Logan. It's up on the big billboard, whatever.
Nice.
And I look up and I'm going, dang, wait a minute, that's my son. And everybody at the party's like, right. And I'm like, no. And we rewind it.
Yeah.
We rewind it to watch it, to show it to you again, not knowing that no one rewound the TVs out there.
Oh.
And Dennis's daughter would come in and say, oh yeah, they're not going to make this. They're going to kick this long field goal. And do it. And they kicked the long field goal a few minutes later. Then later, whatever she tells us about something else happened big in the game, and we're thinking,
how did she know that? Yeah.
It was because of that. But yeah, Logan got a chance to be a part of that. And that's, so we go to a dinner, a banquet,
Yeah.
and we get to sit with Walter Payton's family.
Very nice. Very
Awesome
nice.
people.
I wish I
They're
had
the
that
sweetest.
opportunity. Yep.
Right? Some of the sweetest people you ever know. So,
Yeah.
how about another question? Do you want another question from the audience?
I think that's it.
You did enough.
Excellent.
All right. Good job.